Hey everyone, Nicole Steckline, Technical Agronomist for DeKalb and Asgrow in Northeast Iowa. It's April 12th and you know what that means, planting season! Hold that thought. Okay, that's better. I don't like it when it's colder than 50 degrees and neither does our corn seed. So let's take this inside my office and talk about it more. Okay, that's better. So as we talked about before, I think everybody's pretty well aware of the fact that corn doesn't like to germinate if it's colder than 50 degrees. Can it? Absolutely, but the germination process is much slower. So if we think about soil temperature, we're going to have slower germination and therefore it's going to be in the ground longer. It takes about 100 to 120 GDUs for that corn to germinate and then emerge out of the soil. So let's think about it now. What else likes cool, wet soils? And that would be seedling pathogens such as Rhizoctonia, Pythium, Phytophthora, as well as soil pests such as wireworm, seed corn maggots, and millipedes. So if we plant it into that cool, wet soil, and then it's in that soil for much longer because it's germinating and emerging slower, we've put that seedling, that crop, at an increased risk for stand reduction. Not only that, but if we do look at the calendar, then let's assume that the rest of the season is going to be fairly relatively normal. When we do get that crop in the ground, we will be accumulating GDUs relatively rapidly, so then we'll have increased growth rate. So speaking of the calendar, well, let's just not talk about the calendar. This is all about if the soil conditions are right. We only get one shot at this. I know that a point comes when you just can't wait until every acre is 100%. It happens. We can't wait for forever. You're always going to have those parts of the field that are wet. You know, they're probably just never going to be 100% fit. But do yourself a favor and consider this. Based solely on planting date, we can still capture about 96% of our potential yield when planting by May 15th. So that's about a 4% yield potential loss. So what percentage loss would we have if we create an unfavorable environment by planting when the conditions are poor? Looking just at planting date, if we planted by April 20th and had a subsequent stand loss from about 35,000 to 25,000, we are at the same yield potential as the May 15th planted corn. Plus, our reduced stand is unevenly spaced and it's at a higher risk for the rest of the season because we have created an unfavorable environment for that plant to grow in. So I'll get off my soapbox on waiting until soil conditions are right to plant. So let's talk about seed placement. I like seeing that corn seed placed at about 2 inches in depth. And this is for a couple reasons. The first one being that when that corn seed germinates and that coleoptile is growing towards the surface, it will start to sense sunlight at 3/4 of an inch below the soil surface. And that is where it determines where it's going to set the crown and where it's going to initiate the growth for the first set of nodal roots. Important for 2 reasons. If we set those nodal roots too close to the surface by having a shallow planting depth, the closer you get to the surface, the more fluctuation you're going to have in both temperature and moisture. And we don't want to put all of that risk on that young nodal root system early on. That is something that helps to lead towards things like rootless corn syndrome. The other thing is that the shallower we set that first set of nodal roots, the shallower all of the nodal roots are going to be set. And that's not going to give us as much of an anchor as what we want. The other part of seedling depth is, again, with the fluctuation of temperature and moisture. The closer to the surface that we place that seed, the quicker it's going to fluctuate both in temperature and moisture. So if we have cool overnights, or if we warm up and get very hot and dry and pull all the water away from that seed so it can't imbibe enough water, this is going to make it stay in the soil for longer, at risk for seedling diseases as well as insect pests. So while we're trying not to look at the calendar right now, inevitably we're going to have to. And that's when I'm probably going to start getting the phone calls on people wondering about when we should start changing the maturities of the hybrids that we've chosen. First thing to consider is that we've chosen these hybrids purposefully because of the yield potential and the agronomics. So right up front, I am not going to get really nervous about changing the maturities of the corn that I've selected. When we look at a planting date between April 28th and May 8th, on average, we're only giving up about 57 GDUs. In a corn plant's life, that's only about 3 warm days. So we aren't giving up, that entire 10 days like we think that we are. So if I'm looking at, I've got a 108-day corn chosen, I'm probably not going to think about moving that or switching it out to an earlier hybrid until about May 10th. And when it comes to that mid-season corn, 104, 105-day hybrid, I'm probably not going to think about switching that out until about May 15th. So as soon as we get conditions fit, we can put corn in the ground very quickly. The other 2 considerations that I have left for today are anhydrous ammonia applications and herbicide applications. So just make sure that you have a plan in place, whether it's going to be to change your anhydrous ammonia application to a different nitrogen source, whether it's a liquid application or a dry application, just so that you aren't tempted to put seed in the ground before we've had that 5 to 7 day waiting period following the anhydrous application so that we don't get the seedling burn. I'd hate to see that happen after everything that we've gone through to get corn in the ground. The other one is herbicide application. So it might be really tempting to skip your burn down application in no-till or minimum till or to wait longer. But I'm telling you right now, those fields look clean while you're driving by, but as soon as you start walking through them and move a little bit of that residue out of the way, those winter annuals germinated last fall, and right now they're just waiting. They're just lying in wait for a little bit warmer temperatures, and then they're going to be up and going. With that, the early emerging summer annuals, such as giant ragweed and lamb's quarters, those are going to start to emerge here pretty quickly as well as we start getting some more temperature. So be on the outlook, make your plans, and have a very safe spring.